Okay, at first, thank you very much for giving this introduction, Ms. Buschmeier, thank you, and Mr. Bischmer for giving us a historical background of works and musicology dependencies, what we have as a background of this conference. And naturally, thank you very much, Klaus, for giving this first impression about what we are planning with works and what's our task in the future. I think this is one of the important steps in RISM to go forward to be really a part of the linked open data world. And so I think it's also a big step in the RISM history. Dear colleagues and friends, it's a great honor and especially a pleasure for me to be here and to give you some basic report about the current status of works within RISM. Okay. Dealing with work entity level is quite new to the RISM universe, so let me start with a short overview in the context of this conference to describe our main concepts and the current status. After looking for the purpose and practice to add new works, which will be showed also later in different workshops here, I just want to give some impression about the concept of ontology we have, which is the basis of the 1,000 ways of connectors from RISM sources to a linked data world. So let me first start with the purpose of introducing work entities in RISM. As probably many of you know, there is a well-known picture describing different entities from Group 1 in Further, the functional requirements for bibliographic records from a librarian perspective, which is also the active basis of RDA as an entity relationship model. Here we have some sort of hierarchical order with abstract level on the top and the physical items on the bottom. The order structure is about some sort of has child or has many attribution, e.g. a work is realized through different expressions, and so on. Quite complex and with much room for further explanation. To start only with the entity work, RDA, the resource description and access, describes this as an abstract entity, which only exists through various expressions of the work. As I said, the work lies behind all the various expressions of the work. Directly, this is leading to the definition of an expression as a realization of a work in a specific form, for example, musical. An expression is a specific intellectual or artistic form a work takes each time it is realized. Well, obviously, this is not the sharpest and clearest definition of all time. But we have some two domains, work and expression, in the RDA context, and plenty room for consideration, or not to say confusion, if an expression is related to work alpha or maybe related to work beta. This haziness is commonly known to librarians as a cutoff point, here seen in the picture, described as a schema with some assistance for users to decide if different expressions are having the same work or not. Coming from this basic concept now, let me proceed to the current practice in RISM to add new works and make relations to sources in our editor application Muscat, where work entities as authorities was introduced with version 5 in the last year. As said, this workflow will be more explained during the various training workshops at this conference. With RISM, this starts with inserting new work records. They should be linked as well to other authority providers, namely the WIAF. So after searching a related work record in WIAF, in the interface, this external record data will be imported into the form of the Musicat editor, where more information can be added manually. After creating the work record, existing sources can be linked to this new entry then. Let me explain this more in depth by an example of Mozart's Köchel Catalog 375. With the Musicat WIAF interface, it is sufficient to add only this term, KV375, to get all related work records in WIAF. The best results are shown in the table below the search input fields here. In this case, 2 notes from the German National Library, DNB, as part of the WIAF cluster, or as part of 2 WIAF clusters. The user now can check these entries in the browser and decide whether the entry provided by DNB is adequate or not. The string representation in mark field 100, here a concatenation of all subfields, gives key information about the work like composer in subfield A, title in subfield T, or work catalog number in subfield N in mark. This 100 tag is a core part of the complete mark record displayed in the full record view. After importing this external record into RISM with Musicat, we are using the tag 100 to fill out core information then, with one exception. The composer is directly linked to the personnel names authority with subfield 0 underneath. So the new work entry is directly linked to the creator or composer. This linkage is not visible here, but sometimes later. Additionally, we get the reference from both the WIAF cluster with its ID and the DNB node with the GND number as the main reference we taken, both in tag 24. Instead of building the string representation only by concatenation, in Musicat we have some more sophisticated construction and hopefully better reading by leaving out the subfield tags, remaining core information with a pattern like here, composer, colon, title, work catalog and number, and key and scoring at the end after semicolon. It's about choosing which work really stands behind this string representation. As you may see, there is no source connected to the work entry for now. To add further relationships of sources to the new work, we filter out existing sources in RISM by selecting composer name and the work catalog number. The result table view on the displayed slide we have here gives only the first few rows with 375 by Mozart. In fact, we have about 30 sources now related to the work, if not more, I'm not sure. By manually selecting a musical source, we can now add a relationship to the new work after choosing the new entry in the autocomplete in field 930. We can add this linkage. In this example, the string representation of the work is displayed here as a first entry. This is the same work we have created previously. After saving this record musical source, the new relationship is displayed as a new field in the complete view of the source, also taking the string representation of tag 100. Additionally, the new relationship to the source is shown in the complete view of the work record, where all related sources to the work are displayed as a table, for now only just the previous selected musical source. Aside from tag 100, now we have some more fields in the configuration layout of the work entity in RISM. For example, the genre or musical incipits, not exactly part of the work entity, but more on the expression side. With RISM and Musicat, until now, we do not have a clear and sharp distinction between works and expressions. Probably historically, a reason is that a work catalog in the musical context often are containing musical interpets as well. One idea for further development would be to create new works automatically by grouping related sources using the composer and work catalog number and to connect them to the new entry. This workflow can be opened probably to external users using a RESTful API, which hopefully could be developed for Muscat 6. There's also some room for normalization by taking inheritance from the work record to the source, and we can reduce redundancy. For example, just now we have the same composer in both records, in tag 100 in the work, and in tag 100 again in the musical record, source record. This workflow overview gives also a short impression about the current MARC configuration we have of MARC records in RISM and should be explained more detailed next with regarding fields and elements of this configuration. As we have seen, the core MARC tag in RISM, of works in RISM is tag 100, including a reference to the composer in subfield tag 0. No, it is seen here in the subfield tag code. We can research more information about fields and elements using the RDA registry and RDA toolkit for assistance with its own rules and ontology. For example, the key of a work has the attribution P10221 in the namespace of RDAW. The W on the last position indicating the dependency to the work entity in RDA. Now we can get more description and explanation on the RDA toolkit with its element reference, where we have an URI to the same element in the RDA registry. In Muscat, we can enter this element reference into the configuration of MARC, and also with the RISM guidelines shown here as a link to the RDA element reference and try. So it's not only a description about the content of the field in the guidelines, but also a reference to this external and try in RDA. RISM can reduce redundancy by extending the sort of mapping to all existing MARC fields. This can reveal something about the character and content of the field and its domain, work, or expression. Let's take some example fields. RDAW, P1004 establish a relationship from a work or to a genre. Now in MARC musical sources using MARC tag 650 and also in work with MARC tag 380. RDAE P294 at a relationship of an expression to notated music or musical incipits with both MARC tag 31 in musical sources on the one side and in works on the other. Though it may be possible, for example, to extract this information, for example, the genre, from the work to the musical source by inheritance, if the correct domain of the attribute is identified. Last one remark. The main idea for inserting the work entity in RISM is about connectivity. We have millions of sources, but these records cannot be only grouped into works, but we can also connect these information of musical sources to other data resources. This approach is a well-known common task with many libraries, for example with the DNB, where bibliographic records are connected to the work entries too, as seen here in the slide, where we have it here. I have a link to this work item. With the DNB, generously, we also can get an insert view of the information triple as RDF with using the subject-predicate-object model. For example, this bibliographic item has a schema.org example of work relationship to the work record ending with number 774. This one we have previously imported into Muscat. Again, we can now look to the same work entity at DNB, now in the well-formed web presentation, not in MarkXML, as we have done previously by viewing the mark node in the VIAF cluster. Connectivity, again, the same relationship now with the Bibliothèque Nationale de France. At this slide, we are a CD recording of the work from the Orfeo label is connected to the work entry internally with genre and date of creation time and so on. This BNF work record is in a separate work cluster in VIAF, by the way. It's not the same node we have imported previously. So there are for sure some duplicates in VIAF, and we have to deal with this too. We also have this kind of relationship in Wikidata with its own ontology, for example, with references to music brains and again to VIAF. So the record Q716474 is connected to the VIAF with the same number we have in Muscat now, and we can connect all related musical sources using the work entity with the same VIAF ID to connect these sources to Wikidata, DNB, or, for example, music brains. This is a realization of linked data. Google Knowledge Graph technology, probably one of the successful implementations of RTF for the common user, then used triples as linked data from Wikidata to provide, for example, some overview information about the search term, appearing here on the right side of the slide. This is always appearing if we make some research on the Google search interface, and it's a new way of giving an overview over the search term to the users. Please let me summarize now the current status of the work entity at RISM with this conclusion. With introducing work entities, we can have a clearer data model, and we can optimize information by avoiding redundancy. By using works, also we can provide better end-user experience with more intelligent discovery systems. Additionally, we can proceed to connect our existing data by using a standard ontology and external references, for example, from VIAF, to connect them to the linked data world and to the users on the other side. Thanks very much for paying attention.